Okay, let's dive in today. We're looking at something really complex, pretty dynamic, the political situation in Pakistan.
Yeah, constantly shifting, isn't it?
Exactly. And we want to zero in on, well, the military's role, how that's evolving, and of course, Imran Khan's persistent struggle, plus how the world, sees all this.
Right.
We pulled together quite a stack of sources for you. Passionate online commentaries, this major international magazine, quite a mix. Our mission here in this deep dive is really to cut through some of that noise, pull out the most crucial insights, and help you grasp the forces at play, what it all means for Pakistan and, the wider region, too.
And what's really compelling in the material we've looked at is how these different threads weave together. You've got high-level geopolitics, national interests, but then also the very real personal experiences of people on the ground. We'll be digging into allegations of foreign interference, these internal crackdowns, even how key figures are profiled in the international press. And it raises a big question for all of us, really. With so much information swirling around, how do you figure out what's actually driving change?
Yeah.
We'll try to connect those dots for you, hopefully reveal that bigger picture.
Okay, so let's start maybe at the alleged beginning of a lot of this recent turmoil. The cipher controversy, this whole shadow of a regime change operation.
Right.
Sources are claiming that the military chief at the time, General Bajwa, was influenced by a U.S. threat, specifically from diplomat Donald Lu.
That's the allegation, yeah. Contained in that diplomatic cable, the cipher.
And this threat, it allegedly concerned Pakistan's ties with Russia, particularly oil and gas.
Exactly. The sources suggest that pressure point was used and that it triggered what they call a regime change operation, setting off this whole chain reaction we're still seeing.
And this narrative, it gets even more interesting when you contrast it with India's position.
It really does. Sources indicate India faced, well, apparently similar demands from the U.S., curb ties with Russia, stop buying their oil.
But they refused.
Reportedly, yes, an absolutely not moment, as one source puts it. And India's stated reasons are quite revealing. They argued, apparently, that continued imports were vital for global energy stability
Okay.
and for ensuring affordable energy for their own people. They even pointed out, sources say, that the U.S. had initially encouraged those imports.
Right. Which brings us to this perception of hypocrisy that the sources really highlight.
A powerful one, yeah.
While India was being criticized, you have the EU in 2024 reportedly trading over 67 billion euros with Russia.
Huge numbers. And services trade hitting 17 billion in 2023.
And, record levels of Russian liquefied natural gas imports into the EU as well. Over 16 million tons in 2024.
More than before the recent conflicts, actually.
And it's not just the EU. The U.S. is also reported to still be importing things like uranium, palladium, fertilizers, chemicals from Russia.
So this sharp contrast leads one source to draw a really stark distinction. They frame India's stance as coming from general's honor.
Okay.
Versus Pakistan's general's actions, which are perceived in this source as cowardice or even treachery.
Strong words.
Very strong. And the source links this perception directly to alleged personal benefits and increased comforts for Pakistan's military leadership, suggesting maybe a loss of bravery or principle.
So the implication is profound, right? How a military leadership responds under pressure reflects on national integrity, sovereignty.
Absolutely. That's the core insight being drawn from this comparison in the material.
Okay, so building on that point about leadership and, well, perceived integrity under pressure, let's shift focus to a figure right at the center now, Field Marshal Asim Munir. His rise as army chief has definitely changed the game.
Undeniably. And you see the reaction, right? These widespread protests by overseas Pakistanis all over the globe. Sydney, London, Italy, Spain, Brussels, Paris, Oslo, D.C., New York, Times Square even.
Yeah, quite visible. And what's striking about those protests, as the sources point out, is who they're targeting.
Exactly. It's primarily Field Marshal Asim Munir. The posters, the banners, they single him out. Not so much the politicians this time.
Which is unusual historically, isn't it?
It is. And then there's this other visual element. Sources highlight Munir's image appearing very prominently on PMLN party materials. Banners, posters, hoardings.
The ruling coalition party?
Right. And in some cases, his picture has reportedly even displaced founding fathers like Jinnah and Iqbal, especially around Independence Day.
Wow. That suggests a deliberate effort to, elevate his public profile?
That's certainly the interpretation offered in some sources, a very visible centering of the military chief in the political space.
And this isn't just happening within Pakistan. The Economist, a major international magazine, they published what they called a debut profile of Field Marshal Munir, title Martial Arts.
Catchy title.
It is, and it highlights his, quote, closeness to Donald Trump and his tightening grip on power at home.
So international media is definitely taking notice.
For sure. And the profile digs into some fascinating personal details. He's reportedly the first army chief who is the son of an imam, studied in a madrasa, apparently memorized the Quran.
That's quite a background, different from many predecessors.
And his military training wasn't in the West, like the US or UK, which has often been the case. It was in the East, Malaysia, Indonesia, Japan.
Does the profile offer insights into his character or worldview?
It does. It paints him as anti-jihadist, surprisingly well-versed in Western culture despite his background, a devout Muslim praying 5 times daily, but sources quoted say he keeps religion separate from statecraft.
Interesting combination. What else?
Well, there's mention of alleged inspiration from Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS,
Okay.
and a reported vindictive temper, particularly, the sources claim, towards Imran Khan.
The backstory there is that Khan reportedly fired him from a previous intelligence post, right?
That's what's reported, yes. So potential personal animosity. He's also seen as a risk taker.
Unlike Bajwa, his predecessor.
Exactly. Bajwa preferred quiet diplomacy, according to the profile. Munir is seen as more decisive, maybe more assertive.
And The Economist even speculates about his ambitions. Presidency?
It raises the question, yes. Will he seek more formal power? It notes that foreign leaders, businesses, they're already dealing with him directly. Bypassing the civilian government, perhaps?
That itself signals a major shift in how Pakistan's power structure is viewed internationally, doesn't it?
It really does. And speaking of international views, sources suggest the U.S. is, well, coming around to him, accepting and supporting Munir.
How is that showing itself?
Through things like renewed aid programs, military sales, night vision goggles, armored vehicles are mentioned.
Tangible support.
And also, apparently, a greater willingness in Washington to listen to Pakistan's security concerns, specifically regarding alleged Indian involvement in Balochistan and KP.
And this acceptance, is it conditional? What's the reported reasoning?
Sources link it to his perceived effectiveness, his delivery on counterterrorism efforts.
Right.
And also facilitating access to Pakistan's mineral resources, so transactional elements there.
Which leads us to something pretty startling reported in that Economist piece. Citing a Pakistani military spokesperson, Ahmed Sharif,
Yeah.
it apparently outlines a new potential war plan regarding India.
A new war plan. What does it say?
That in a future conflict, Pakistan plans to, quote, attack deeper inside India, specifically targeting India's east places like Bihar, Bengal, Assam, as a counterattack strategy.
Wow. That's a significant potential shift in strategic thinking, if accurate, attacking the East.
It's a very specific and, frankly, surprising detail to see reported, and the overall picture painted by sources. Munir is seen as the most powerful chief since Musharraf.
Another general who took power directly.
Precisely, and the conclusion drawn is that with U.S. acceptance, his central role is unlikely to diminish.
Which potentially sidelines the elected politicians even further, like the Sharifs.
Making them, as some sources put it, perhaps just figureheads in this hybrid model of governing.
Okay, so if the establishment's power is consolidating, internationally accepted, the big question is resistance. Which brings us right back to Imran Khan and his party, PTI. They are certainly pushing back.
Definitely. Sources detailed these alleged offers made to Khan, deals for him to leave the country, maybe go to the Gulf or the UK, an exit route.
But he's refused.
Consistently refused, according to these accounts.
Despite claims from some journalists that he agreed to apologize for the May 9th violence.
Other sources strongly refute that. They say Khan actually blamed the establishment itself for orchestrating that violence, not his supporters. So no apology forthcoming, it seems.
Right. And instead of deals, what we're seeing described is a severe crackdown.
Extremely severe, based on the reports. And this term lawfare keeps coming up.
Tell us about that. What does it entail?
Well, sources describe widespread police raids across Punjab targeting PTI workers. Homes, businesses, there are allegations of torture, even, shockingly, arrests of children just for chanting pro-Khan slogans.
Children arrested for slogans?
That's what's alleged. And then there's this really controversial tactic, advance FIRs, first information reports. Apparently, on August 4th, police registered FIRs for protests that were planned for August 5th.
So, documenting future events as if they already happened, pre-crime almost.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
It's quite extraordinary. And a major newspaper editorial from Dawn News explicitly calls this lawfare,
A legal war.
a legal war against political opponents. They describe it as unprecedented in Pakistan, treating political workers like terrorists under the law.
So, facing that kind of pressure, how are PTI and its supporters responding? What are their strategies?
They're adapting, it seems. Overseas Pakistanis are playing a big role. Those protests we mentioned earlier in cities worldwide. The aim is to build pressure internationally.
Send a message about human rights, rule of law.
Exactly. That the diaspora cares and is watching. And then there was that New York Times ad.
Right, the full-page ad caused quite a stir.
It did. Sources estimate the cost around $100,000 to $150,000 funded by overseas supporters, not the millions the government alleged, apparently. And the government's reaction was quite strong, wasn't it?
Very strong. Which some sources contrasted with the government's own expensive but often untraceable advertising spending, highlighting a perceived double standard.
Okay, so international pressure is one angle. What about inside Pakistan?
There's a new strategy mentioned, introduced by a PTI leader named Amir Moghul. It's called the Arrest Avoidance Violence Avoidance Strategy.
How does that work?
The idea is for small groups, maybe 15, 20 young people, to briefly block main roads, deliver Imran Khan's message, maybe chant some slogans, and then disperse quickly before the police can arrive in force.
Ah, so avoiding direct confrontation, avoiding arrests, avoiding violence, flash mob style protest.
Kind of, yeah. Quick, visible disruption, then disappear. Keep the pressure on without feeding into mass arrests.
Interesting. And beyond these tactics, is there a broader strategic plan?
Well, one source reveals quite a detailed plan. An 18-point strategic roadmap, reportedly crafted by a close friend of Imran Khan, initially shared internally with PTI leaders, now made public. 18 points. That sounds comprehensive. What does it cover?
It's really multi-pronged. It's not just about street protests. It suggests a long game, an attritional strategy. For example, it calls for an economic boycott.
Boycotting businesses.
Yeah, businesses and products linked to key figures in the current regime generals. Specific industrialists, like sugar mill owners mentioned in the sources, hit them financially.
Okay, what else?
A social boycott, refusing invitations to weddings, funerals, birthdays of regime members, and not inviting them to your own events. The goal is to inflict social pain, isolation.
Wow, that's quite personal.
It is. Then there are things we've touched on. Flash protests, empowering the overseas diaspora even more. Also, a specific point about highlighting the suffering of jailed PTI workers, bringing their stories out.
Humanizing the struggle.
Exactly. Plus, continued engagement with international media, regular briefings, and a boycott of mainstream Pakistani TV talk shows that don't allow Imran Khan's name to even be mentioned.
That's still happening,
Well,
banning his name.
apparently so, on some channels, according to these sources. The plan also includes lobbying international human rights organizations with dossiers on alleged abuses.
So formal documentation.
Yes. And connecting local issues like farmers' problems or the missing persons issue in Balochistan to the broader national demands for rule of law and democracy.
Trying to broaden the coalition.
Seems like it. There's also mention of PTI's elected members holding mock assemblies outside Parliament, flooding the courts with petitions, choking the legal system, as the source puts it.
More lawfare, but from the other side.
Perhaps using the system against itself. Also, engaging mosques to advocate for justice and human rights. Creating a website to name and shame officials allegedly involved in abuses.
Public accountability.
Observing commemorative days for key events like martyrs, arrests, keeping the memory alive.
Yeah.
Championing social media workers, especially those detained. Fundraising for affected party workers.
It's incredibly detailed, a real blueprint for sustained resistance across many fronts.
It really outlines a shift from just reactive protests to a very structured long-term campaign.
And Imran Khan himself, how does he view this from jail?
Sources indicate he sees his struggle as a test match.
Like in cricket, long, drawn out.
Exactly. A war of attrition. He's reportedly not expecting a quick fix, not demanding huge immediate actions from his party. The strategy seems to be about wearing down the establishment through this sustained, multifaceted pressure campaign, orchestrated even from his jail cell.
Okay, this really paints a picture of deep conflict. What are the broader implications, the human cost?
Well, the sources are quite critical of other institutions too, the judiciary, for instance. There are allegations, particularly against the Chief Justice of the Islamabad High Court, of becoming a facilitator for the regime.
How so? What examples are given?
One specific incident mentioned is reportedly ordering the removal of families protesting about missing persons in Balochistan. They were camped out in Islamabad. Instead of addressing their grievances, the reported action was to have them removed, which raises serious questions about judicial independence.
Yeah, that's concerning. And are other groups protesting besides PTI?
Yes, it's not just PTI. Sources mention the MWM party Muttahida Majlis Wadati Muslimin.
Uh-huh.
They announced a march for August 6th, 2025. That date seems far off, perhaps a typo in the source, but the intent is clear.
Okay, a march from Karachi to the Iran border.
Yes, protesting the government's closure of an affordable land route used by pilgrims going to Iran. So a specific religious and economic grievance.
And in Azad, Kashmir.
Protests erupted there too, apparently. Roadblocks in the Poonch district. This followed the arrest of Sardar Abdul Qayyum Niasi. He's a former prime minister of AJK and a PTI leader.
Arrested for protesting Khan's situation.
That's the reported reason. Protesters there issued a 24-hour ultimatum for his release. So yes, discontent is bubbling up in different areas over different issues, but often linking back to the central political struggle.
And all this is happening against a backdrop of economic hardship.
Definitely. The sources paint a grim economic picture. The price of sugar, a basic necessity, reportedly shot past 200 rupees per kilogram.
200 rupees. That's incredibly high.
Yes, and there are accusations that the sugar cartel embezzled something like 300 billion rupees.
Huge sums, again. And reports of government spending.
Juxtaposed with the sugar price, sources mention things like nearly 48 million rupees spent just renovating one federal minister's house.
Oof. That contrast is stark, isn't it? High sugar prices for the public, lavish spending for officials.
It fuels the narrative of corruption and mismanagement hitting ordinary people directly.
So, stepping back, what's the overall assessment from these sources? What's the damage?
That Dawn News editorial we mentioned earlier offers a pretty sobering take. It calls the current situation a hybrid regime that has, quote, devastated the country.
Devastated.
Yes, and warns it will take decades to recover the losses. Especially, it emphasizes, the damage done by the judiciary's perceived surrender. That loss of institutional integrity is seen as a very deep wound.
And the suppression of dissent continues. Seems so. Sources mention the alleged use of the police to, quote, wash the dirty clothes of the establishment, silencing critics. And there's commentary on the hypocrisy of some politicians. Figures like Khwaja Asif are mentioned.
What about him?
Well, politicians who once championed slogans like respect the vote now reportedly advocate for expediency, essentially, compromise with the establishment, openly admitting, sources say, to this hybrid model where elected officials are just figureheads.
Acknowledging their limited power.
Pretty much, yeah. It reveals the complex reality behind the political facade.
So, pulling all these threads together, where does this leave Pakistan? We've seen this clear push by the military establishment to consolidate power, maybe gain international acceptance, but facing this really determined, multi-layered resistance from within. We've explored these narratives of national pride versus perceived betrayal, the deep anger felt by many, from, U.S.-Russia geopolitics right down to kids being arrested on the streets. The scale is immense. It really is. And if you connect it all, as that Dawn editorial suggests, you have what's described as a hybrid regime. Civilian faces, perhaps, but significant power resting elsewhere. That seems to be the core assessment in much of the material.
Right.
And that potential shift in strategic thinking towards India, the one The Economist reported, if true, that could really reshape things regionally.
Yeah, big implications there.
And domestically, the continued suppression, the use of lawfare, the questions around judicial independence, politicians admitting they're just figureheads, it all paints a picture of a system under immense strain.
So it leaves us and you, our listener, with some tough questions, doesn't it?
It certainly does.
In a situation where lawfare is reportedly used against political workers, where national symbols seem to be getting redefined, how do you define freedom and progress?
And maybe even more fundamentally, what is the role? What can be the role of informed citizens in trying to shape a nation's future when that path forward looks so contested, so uncertain?
A lot to think about there.